Mid-morning on Saturday, April 15, 2017. Xisco Gràcia unloaded oxygen tanks from his truck near Cova de Sapiqueta, a subaquatic cave system on Majorca. For over 2 decades, the 54-year-old geology professor had meticulously mapped the island's underwater caves, capturing unique scientific data. His longtime friend Guillem Mascaró, also 54, joined him for the dive. Unfolding a map, Xisco pointed to an area 900 meters from the cave's entrance. "These underwater chambers have never been properly studied," he told Guillem. For Xisco, who often claimed Majorca's subterranean beauty surpassed its surface, this wasn't just another dive. It was a chance to be the first to document these untouched chambers. Damp, musty air enveloped them as they entered the cave mouth and disappeared into the blackness. Xisco attached 4 bottles of air to his belt and passed 3 to Guillem. Their air supply was precisely calculated, enough to explore and return with an extra hour for emergencies. With his regulator clenched between his teeth, Xisco plunged beneath the surface. Guillem followed closely. These veterans relied on a critical navigation tool, thin nylon guidelines marked with numbered labels. Each forked tunnel required a new line down the diverging passage. This deceptively simple system was their lifeline, the only way to navigate the twisting, identical passages. At each intersection, they placed arrows pointing toward the exit, creating a breadcrumb trail back to safety. The exceptionally clear water made markers easily visible as the men propelled themselves forward. After an hour navigating increasingly narrow passageways, Xisco reached one of the unexplored chambers. While he collected rock samples, Guillem measured a nearby cavern. The men worked methodically, absorbed in their scientific pursuits. Then Xisco checked his gauges. The tanks were a third empty, enough air for 2 more hours, 2.5 tops. Grabbing Guillem's shoulder, Xisco pointed to his dials. Time to exit. The return journey began smoothly through wide passages, but soon the walls closed in, until Xisco's tanks scraped against rock. Each contact kicked up more sediment, transforming the once clear water into thick chocolate soup. Despite deteriorating visibility, the divers followed the white cord hand over hand until they hit something alarming: a rock wall where the guideline suddenly ended. Xisco frantically felt for the next section, but his hands found only empty water. Making a split-second decision, he signaled Guillem to head for a cave 200 meters away with an air pocket. Conserving their remaining tank air had suddenly become critical. As Guillem made for the air pocket, Xisco continued searching for the severed guideline. He waved desperately through the murky void until he discovered what had happened. A rock piece where the guideline attached had broken off, snapping the wire against a jagged edge. Pulling off his gloves for better sensitivity, he felt blindly through the dark cloud. He swam back and forth, touching nothing but rock and sediment. With every movement, visibility worsened. By the time Xisco located both ends of the guide wire and performed an emergency repair, a horrifying realization dawned. A glance at his regulator revealed how long he'd spent searching. They had only about an hour of air each, still a kilometer from the exit. Even finding the right path, they might run out before reaching the surface. Xisco swam to the cave where Guillem waited. Breaking the surface, he found himself in a cavernous room with a large underground lake, 100 meters long, 40 meters wide, with a 12-meter gap between water and ceiling. Beyond stood pointed rocks, some towering high above the water. The moment he inhaled, Xisco realized the air was poisonous. The carbon dioxide concentration was dangerously high, 100 times above normal. As a geology professor, the implications were immediately clear: elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, headaches, hallucinations, paralysis, unconsciousness, and eventually, death. The two men climbed onto the jagged rocks of the pitch-black chamber. Xisco shared the grim news. There was another route to the surface, but longer. He pointed it out on a laminated map, explaining that the guideline along that path should remain intact. After examining their tanks, Guillem delivered the crushing verdict. Only enough air for one to reach the surface. An impossible decision confronted them. Xisco indicated that Guillem, being smaller and quicker, would use less air returning. Additionally, Xisco had spent days exploring chambers with carbon dioxide-saturated air and knew how to slow his breathing to reduce toxic gas inhalation. The decision was made. Xisco would stay while Guillem sought help. They planned the alternative route together, though parts required Guillem to navigate without a guideline, like driving through impenetrable fog. Guillem reluctantly left his friend behind, a knot of worry tightening in his chest, knowing it was their only survival chance. As Guillem suited up with the remaining tanks, Xisco watched him disappear beneath the water, a silent hope for their reunion lingering in the air. He drew a shallow breath and felt his pulse quicken, one of the first warning signs of carbon dioxide poisoning. It was approaching 6 p.m. Saturday evening. Less than an hour later, Guillem surfaced outside the cave. He ripped off his regulator and gasped fresh air, relief washing over him. With trembling fingers, he called Group Nord, Majorca's caving organization. Within an hour, top island cave divers gathered in the deepening dark. The situation's gravity was immediately clear. High carbon dioxide levels worried them. Xisco's survival time remained uncertain. They quickly planned 2 cave familiar divers would enter first. They marked Xisco's location and gave the map to the divers, watching them vanish into the darkness of the cave. 2 hours later, they returned with grim news. Guillem's desperate surfacing had stirred up sediment. Visibility was nearly zero. Tunnel markers became unreadable in the murk. They needed to wait for the water to clear before diving again. This could take hours, even days. Xisco might suffocate from carbon dioxide poisoning while they waited, but diving in chocolate water was pointless, risking more lives. Waiting was all they could do. Back in the chamber's darkness, minutes crawled like hours for Xisco. After Guillem left, he removed most equipment and climbed the jagged rocks, seeking a flat, drier area near a thin water pool to prevent hypothermia in the extremely humid environment. Carbon dioxide effects had already taken hold. Dizziness clouded his thinking. A creeping dread consumed him. What if Guillem was dead and no one knew his location? Using his headlamp, Xisco carefully descended to the lake. He cupped his hands and raised the clear liquid to his lips. Fortunately, while much cave water was salty, this lake's top layer was relatively fresh. Xisco made a critical decision. Move only when absolutely necessary. Drink. Urinate. Nothing more. Every movement meant inhaling more poison. He extinguished his headlamp to preserve battery. 2 of 3 torches had already failed, the third running low. He lay in cold, humid darkness. In the silent void, his thoughts turned to his ex-wife. Their divorce just a year ago had devastated him. He wondered if she knew yet and if she would tell their children, his 15-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter. They were too young to lose their father. During the first hours, hope sustained him. Surely Guillem had escaped and help was coming. But as time passed, that hope faded, replaced by the terrifying thought that Guillem might have gotten lost and died, leaving no one aware of his trap below. Above ground, a frantic rescue effort mobilized. Over 60 people gathered under police command. Island divers and cavers debated the best approach, while police contained growing crowds of reporters. No one penetrated deep into the cave. Divers managed only 100 meters, risking disorientation in the maze. On Sunday, Rescuers thought they'd found Xisco's chamber, drilling for oxygen and food delivery, but failed to reach him. After consulting with divers and police, the Guardia Civil officer made a difficult choice: wait until morning to dive again. The decision triggered frustrated groans, but everyone knew risking more divers in zero visibility wouldn't help Xisco. By 9:30 p.m. Sunday, Xisco had endured over 30 underground hours. Deep in the cave, the toxic air grew thicker. Each breath became a battle as Xisco's oxygen-starved body fought to extract what little it could from the poisoned atmosphere. His head pounded mercilessly. His mind played cruel tricks. Phantom lights danced in the lake. Imaginary bubbles broke the surface. Hallucinated voices called his name. Each time he turned to look, only darkness greeted him. In this darkest moment, Xisco confronted mortality. He faced a diver's worst nightmare, dying slowly without food or air. With his light nearly gone, he knew water navigation in complete darkness would be impossible. In desperation, he decided to swim for his gear to retrieve his knife. A last resort between dying quickly or slowly. Above ground, a breakthrough finally emerged. Xisco's friend John Fernandez, waiting over a day for his search turn, received the call. He swam through the first tunnel and his heart lifted. The water was clearing. Not perfect, but sufficient to see markers. Carefully, Freddy cut all lines except the one to Xisco. 2 hours later, he surfaced smiling. Good news, they were close and the next diver could reach him. Another friend, Burnett, quickly geared up and entered. Following just one white line, he navigated the maze toward Xisco's chamber. After about an hour underwater, Burnett sensed he was close. His priority then was to determine if Xisco was alive and what type of rescue mission was required. In the chamber, Xisco had accepted this would be his tomb. Then, he heard bubbles again, like a surfacing diver. Light danced on the ceiling. Someone called his name repeatedly. Xisco turned and saw his old friend Bernat dripping wet and approaching. Realizing this wasn't another hallucination, Xisco plunged into the water and embraced him, relief flooding his senses. His first question: was Guillem dead? Bernat assured him that Guillem was alive and waiting for him at the surface. He gave Xisco some glucose gel for energy, and the two men talked until Bernat was sure Xisco was in good enough shape to make the return trip out. He explained he would return to report Xisco's survival, and that the next divers would bring air and extract him. Bernat needed to contact the rescue team but left glucose pouches to boost Xisco's energy. When asked if he could wait longer, Xisco replied that knowing he was saved, he could endure another day if necessary. 4 hours later, around 8 p.m. Monday, Hilary Moreno and Enrique Ballesteros, both friends, emerged carrying nitrox tanks, a gas with twice the oxygen of regular air. As Xisco breathed the potent mixture, life returned to his body. His head cleared, and for the first time in 58 hours, he could take a full, deep breath. Indicating readiness to leave, Xisco prepared for one final endurance test: a 90-minute swim to the surface after nearly 3 days in toxic air. 60 hours after entering Cova de Sapiqueta, at 11:10 p.m. Monday, Xisco walked unaided from the cave mouth to cheers from an overjoyed crowd. Guillem, anxiously waiting, broke into a relieved grin seeing his friend alive. They embraced briefly before Xisco was rushed to an ambulance. His body temperature had dropped to a dangerous 32 degrees Celsius, risking hypothermia. He would spend the night breathing pure oxygen. Throughout his 60-hour death battle, Xisco maintained remarkable emotional control, discipline honed through decades of dangerous diving. But the next day, watching footage of dozens working tirelessly to save him, the stoic explorer finally broke. Tears streamed down his face as the weight of others' sacrifice and his own survival crashed over him. Remarkably, Xisco returned to cave diving just 1 month after the incident. He even revisited the chamber where he was trapped. "I was born to explore caves," he says simply. Today, Xisco continues mapping Majorca's underwater heritage, driven by an unquenchable passion that even 60 hours at death's door couldn't extinguish. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.